What's going on, y'all, and welcome on in. Today I got another video in the beginner guide series, and this time let's talk about everything related to Royal Capital Azmakalis, as well as the Azmakalis of Cycle Normal, and a little bit about the Nightmare mode, as all of this just recently got revamped big time. We're going to cover everything from the basic rules, the boss rewards, a boss guide, recommended party compositions, as well as the shops. Thank you once again to Smilegate for sponsoring this video. I hope you guys learn a lot. Welcome to Epic 7 if you're new. Returning players, we're going to go over some things that you need to be aware of. And without further ado, buckle in. Let's get into it. All right, guys, let's first talk about the Royal Capital Azmakalis. We used to refer to this as normal raid, but now it is way different and has undergone a lot of significant changes. Some of said changes include the fact that it is now a one-time clear instead of a weekly reset. For one-time clearing it, you can get some ancient coins as well as some Queensguard badges, which we'll cover later on in the video. On top of that, the rewards got increased from level 67 to level 80, so definitely a nice boost, especially for newer and returning players. One quick note, guys, I jumped into the portal and the logistics officer found in this Royal Capital Azmakalis, the one clear time version, she will be eventually phased out. You can no longer obtain these coronation souvenirs, but she was left in the game in case veterans or returning players had some currency that they want to exchange before she eventually leaves forever. So if you're new to this mode, don't worry. If you see her, you can no longer get this currency. She's going to be phased out eventually. One quick tip I have for you guys while we're in this shop: if you're ever in Azmakalis and you just want to check out the merchants, if you just want to explore, test out some compositions, party teams, or if you want to check out normal Labyrinth and the other shops, such as the Vagrant or Hoochie shop, you can always just go in, guys, buy stuff. It'll still count and then yield out, and it won't take up your compasses or bug charms, for example. Now, keep in mind, if you did kill bosses or mobs and you yield out, it's not going to count for those. It won't give you credit for those kills. You will have to take a portal if you want to get actual mob kills and boss kills as credit. But this is very useful if you want to check merchants, just explore and test things without using those compasses or bug charms. Next up, let's talk about the bosses that we'll encounter in Royal Capital Azmakalis. But first, I want to show you all the team composition that I ended up using for every single boss in this version. And you can also use this team for most of the cycle, but maybe not the nightmare mode, as we will have to change things around, or depending on what you guys encounter, if your gear isn't as good, you may have to move or swap out a few units here and there depending on the boss, but we'll cover that more in depth here in just a moment. So I ended up using a team of Angelica as my tank. She also provides some backup healing and cleansing. My single target damage is heavily carried by Commander Lorena. My area of effect, this is going to be very important. We want units that can hit multiple targets as well as stealth targets. That'll be done from Mercedes, Fire Mercedes. And last but not least, I have Montmorency, specially changed Montmorency, who's going to do the heavy lifting in terms of the main cleanser and main healer. Now, all of these units, guys, are either free or available in the connection, so every single one of y'all can get these units. Now, of course, you can swap anything out that you want. If you guys have DN or Tamarin, maybe y'all want to upgrade your Soul Reavers in that regard. If you have better units that do area of effect damage, maybe you have Arbiter Villager for your Mystic Connection. Or if you like Clarissa instead, who also provides like defense breaks, you can swap that out there as well. For single target, if you guys picked up Spectre Tenebria from your Mystic Connection, or if you have a unit like Luna, you can use that instead here. Essentially, we just want to have a tank, some healing, especially cleansing, as well as some heavy single target damage and a unit that can hit area of effect. Now, we don't need that for every single boss, but if we bring that for in general, then we can actually target and be ready for all the bosses inside this raid. One quick note, guys, this composition I have here, I just wanted to show because one, it can clear all of the normal version as well as the normal version in cycle if your gear is good enough, but ways we can improve upon it, and we will need to improve upon it when we go into like especially the nightmare version, you know, the higher difficult modes. We're gonna need access to things like defense breaks. We can find those from units like Flurry, Falconer Flurry, Iceria. We can find that in units like Clarissa, Furious, just to name a few. In terms of dispels, which we're going to need as well, which is removing buffs from bosses. It's a very important mechanic in the harder versions. We can find that also in units like Iceria. Units like Tamarin will have that built into her kit, and we can even get access to artifacts if we have mages such as Ayala's Violin, which you can get in the Hall of Trials shop. That's just a few things that you'll keep in mind for later. In the beginning, any composition like this that has heals, sustain, tanks, high single target damage, and area effect damage, you'll be fine to clear a majority of the early and middle ground Royal Capital Azmakalis versions. All right, guys, now that we got party compositions out the way, let's jump into the in-game boss guide so we can check out the different bosses we'll encounter as well as the strategies to beat them. Now, keep in mind, for the one clear version of Royal Capital Azmakalis, as well as the normal version of the Cycle of Azmakalis, the strategy remains largely the same across all the bosses. The only thing that shifts up is the difficulty will be like increased health and damage that the bosses have or do. Now for the Nightmare mode, the strategy will change completely, but you don't have to worry about that for a long while. Just focus on clearing the one clear version as well as the normal version of Cycle first. So let's go ahead and talk about Devar Archon, who's the first boss you'll probably encounter, as well as arguably the easiest. Long story short, guys, the strategy is very simple. He is accompanied by 2 little mobs, and while those little mobs, those little bugs that are with him are alive, he takes very, very reduced damage. So all you got to do is clear those little mobs, kill those little mobs first with area effect attacks, or you can just single target rush them down and then focus everything onto Archon, where he'll take full damage after they're dead. Now beyond that, it's really just staying alive via sustain, healing. Make sure you clear any debuffs, and that's really it. Keep clearing the mobs and then hit him afterwards. Super simple, very easy. Next on the list, guys, we have Executioner Carcanus. Now, he's going to hit a lot harder than Archon because he will grant himself stackable increased attack and speed, so we don't want to take too long to kill him. On top of that, he's trickier because he periodically will stealth himself, so make sure you bring some area of effect attacks to get him out of that stealth. That's why I said it's very important to have a unit like Mercedes, Arbor de Vildre, Clarissa. Keep in mind, units like Tamarin, who is so good, also has access to area effect hits that can just bring him out of that stealth temporarily. Next up after Carcanus, we encounter Secretary Vera. Now keep in mind, guys, she is Earth Element, and the strategy for beating her is fairly simple. She's going to be accompanied by a lot of eggs that will eventually hatch, and all we got to do is make sure we have enough area effect damage, right? Units that have a lot of AoEs to continually clear the eggs and adds, and then we'll eventually kill Vera herself. After Vera, guys, we have the Jewleaf Council, one of the more annoying bosses, I would say, in the raid. Essentially, you're going to want to bring enough cleanse because the boss will do a ton of poison effects on your units, and if you don't have cleanse to clear that, it can often wipe your squad. Now, on top of having a lot of dispel, sustain, and healing, the boss will split, and you'll have to do a little guessing game in terms of finding the real one, but that's simply just hit every single one until you kill it, or just hit it with area effect attacks as per usual, and then you'll just rinse and repeat, keep cleansing, keep healing, and you'll eventually beat this boss. Last and certainly not least, we have the Queen Azmakalis herself. She's kind of like a lot of the other bosses just combined into one. She's going to be accompanied by eggs, be accompanied by adds. She's going to do some good damage. So make sure you bring a lot of healing. She's going to do a lot of debuffs as well. So make sure you have your healing and sustain and cleanses on point. And for more difficult versions of the Queen, it's going to be very important to have access to things like Dispel, like I mentioned earlier. But in the basic versions here and in normal cycle, just make sure you can survive via healing, clear the debuffs, and grind her down, as well as killing and managing the adds. Overall, not too difficult until you get to the Nightmare mode, so don't sweat it too much. All right, that wraps up the boss strategies. Let's go ahead and check out the Labyrinth Shop. What can we buy with all these resources we get from doing said raids? So we have access to malicious bug charms, which you will use to enter the Cycle of Azmakalis, both the normal and raid versions. We have Labyrinth compasses that you can pick up via Skystones, free to play. I would advise not to pick that up, but if you do have extra leaf skies, you can get more compasses so that you can enter more raids or trade them in for bug charms to get into those higher difficult raids for the better rewards. Now on top of that, there are things like accessory chests that you can get via ancient coins, but I'd highly advise not picking these up, as level 22 to 60 gear you will move past very quickly. I would recommend picking up though, and this is one of the best areas to get charms for your accessories, guys. Gear is so important in this game, and upgrading them can be a hassle. But charms are very nice to get in this mode, so make sure you stock up on those ancient coins, do your raids, as it's very important to upgrade those accessories. Last up, guys, I want to briefly talk about the Azmakalis Cycle, the Nightmare version. I know this is a beginner guide, but you guys should start preparing, or at least thinking of, the Nightmare mode, as this is the end game that you guys will want to strive for, and you definitely need to, because look at some of these rewards you can get in there. We have 88 pieces of gear on some nice sets that you guys may not be farming for. On top of that, the subsets that these things just roll with are obscenely high, so it's definitely something you need to aim and try to get eventually. Beyond just the boss rewards and drops that I just showed you, the Alexa or the logistics officer found in this nightmare mode has some amazing stuff as well, which we talked about the Queen's Guard badge way early in the video. When we collect these, which remember you guys can get a 10 piece from clearing the regular version, the first thing we talked about in this guide, we can use these to trade for some very nice gear. Look at this, guys. This penetration neck. This epic necklace is about as good, or a perfect piece that you would roll from something like the Artena crafting event. So once again, I know this is a beginner guide, but definitely you need to start working towards this, and keep in mind that the nightmare versions of the bosses are going to be much more difficult. You'll need more specific heroes, better gear, but it's something that you guys can all strive for and eventually attain. So for now, just use my earlier tips to work on the normal versions, and eventually you will be able to clear and get these awesome rewards in the nightmare mode. Alright guys, that about sums up everything you need to know about Royal Capital Azmakalis. If you need any extra help, feel free to stop by my Discord, my Twitch streams. You can find all of that in the description below, or just leave me a comment on this video and I'll help you out when I can. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.